This video is sponsored by Audible. Get 1 free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals by visiting audible.com/nameexplain or by texting nameexplain to 500 500. In 1897, Irish author Bram Stoker published his most famous book. This book set in stone so many elements of Gothic literature and Gothic culture that have since become a mainstay of the genre, and introduced the world to one of the most famous fictional characters ever, Count Dracula. We all have an image of Dracula in our mind, and Stoker described him as a tall old man, clean shaven save for a long white mustache, and clad in black from head to toe, without a single speck of colour about him anywhere, and that his face was a strong, very strong, aquiline, with high bridge of the thin nose and peculiarly arched nostrils, with lofty domed forehead, and hair growing scantily around the temples but profusely elsewhere. His eyebrows were very massive, almost meeting over the nose, and with bushy hair that seemed to curl on its own profusion. The mouth, so far as I could see it under the heavy mustache, was fixed and rather cruel looking, with peculiarly sharp white teeth. These protruded over the lips, whose remarkable ruddiness showed astonished vitality in a man of his years. For the rest, his ears were pale, and at the tops extremely pointed. The chin was broad and strong, and the cheeks firm though thin. The general effect was one of extraordinary pallor. This book and the character of Dracula helped shape the modern idea of vampires, and the Count himself has appeared in things from films, television shows, video games, radio plays, you name it, Dracula has probably starred in it, and that name of Dracula is known all across the world too. It may be one of those names that no matter who you say it to, the same person comes to mind. However, that name was not of Stoker's concoction. For this name, Stoker delved into the history books, and while Count Dracula is a fictitious character, there was a real man who held this name, a man so evil and wicked that Stoker felt his name would be suitable and fitting for the devilish vampire of his own creation. Now, what kind of life would someone have to lead for their name to be suitable for a bloodthirsty vampire? Well, while this person from history did hold the name of Dracula, he is actually more well known for his title, a title he earned due to a particular habit he had when it came to dealing with his foes. We are of course talking about Vlad Dracula, or as he is more well known as, Vlad the Impaler. It's more than just a name and a lust for blood that ties together the Count and the Impaler. Both are seen to have derived from Transylvania. The Count lives in this region of modern day Romania, and it's believed that the Impaler was born here. However, despite how linked the Impaler has come with Transylvania, aside from possibly being born there, he didn't have much to do with it. It's thought he didn't even set foot in the famous Bran castle that is sold to many tourists as being Dracula's castle. Vlad the Impaler has more to do with the principality that was neighbours with Transylvania, Wallachia, which too is in modern day Romania. It was thanks to his birth, however, as to why he received the surname of Dracula, as surnames are passed down families. Vlad the Impaler was also known as Vlad III, as his father was unsurprisingly Vlad II, a ruler of Wallachia. Vlad III was thought to be born somewhere between 1428 and 1431. It was also in 1431 that Sigismund, the King of Hungary, who would eventually become Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, at that time inducted Vlad's father, Vlad II, into the Order of the Dragons, an order established to protect the royal family and Christianity from threats like the Ottomans. As a member, Vlad II took on a new surname, Dracul, coming from the old Romanian word Drac, meaning dragon, so Vlad II became known as Vlad Dracul, aka Vlad the Dragon. So of course Vlad II's son would take on this surname of Dracul too, but not exactly that surname. Many surnames we have today are patronymic, meaning they derive from the name of the father, like Johnson means son of John. This means that Vlad II's surname of Dracul was adapted like this to fit his son, so Vlad III's surname wouldn't simply mean dragon, but son of dragon, and this in Old Romanian was Draculia, which was then adapted into Dracula, hence how Vlad III ended up with that now infamous surname. And fun fact, before meaning dragon in Old Romanian, Dracul meant serpent, and related closely with the snake that tempted Eve into the Garden of Eden. This snake was seen as the devil, and in the Romanian language to this day, Dracul can still mean the devil. So it seems he would have been known as Vlad Dracula from quite a young age, but it would take some time for him to become known as Vlad the Impaler, or Vlad Tepes as it is in his native tongue. In fact, this name wasn't bestowed upon him until after his death. So what did he do to earn that title? Well, for this we have to go back to seeing Vlad as a child, with his father Vlad II as a Voivod, meaning ruler of Wallachia. While to start with, his father was on the side of Emperor Sigismund against the Ottomans, Vlad II eventually broke off from Sigismund and joined join the Ottomans to help balance the power. However, the Ottomans grew suspicious of him joining, so they imprisoned him, and they also held his children Vlad III and Radu hostage to make sure he wouldn't betray them. Of course, he didn't stay true to this word and liaison between Hungary and the Ottomans, which unsurprisingly led to his murder. With the death of Vlad II, Wallachia was without a voivode. However, becoming voivode was not as clear-cut as other hereditary positions, like with kings and queens. A man by the name of Vladislav was instead made voivode. Once Vlad III was free from his hostage situation, he campaigned to take over his father's role, and he was successful in all this, but wasn't that simple. From here up until his death, Vlad III was voivode 3 times. Like I said, it wasn't as simple as being king for life. He was voivode in 1448, from 1456 to 1462, and once again in either December 1476 or January 1477. We aren't too sure on the specifics. So what did he do during his various reigns as voivode? Well, the first issue he had was the same issue his predecessors had, like his father, the task of balancing the independent Wallachia between Hungary and the Ottomans. And of course he had to fend off enemies of Wallachia, and he did this in a very specific way, through fear. Vlad ruled in a way which was made to strike fear into anyone who wanted to come against him. This is where things get a little gruesome, so you may want to skip ahead if you're a little squeamish. Vlad would torture anyone who came up against him, whether they were enemies of the state or just slaves who had disgruntled him. Of course, his preferred form of torture was impalement. People could be impaled in various ways. I read that some were impaled vertically and some horizontally, that some were forced to awkwardly sit on top of the stake as their legs gave out they would be impaled. I even read that not all the stakes were sharp at the end, so it would just go through them but keep them alive. Apparently it could take up to days for people to die from this. However, this wasn't the only form of torture he enjoyed. He apparently also boiled people alive, skinned and scalped people, dismembered limbs, and even fed people to animals, and no one was safe from him. Legends tell he would even do this to women and children. However, perhaps some of these stories evolved from the legend that began to surround him. We aren't too sure. All of this torturing was done to keep peace in Wallachia, and in some ways it seems to have been successful. One story even tells us that in one battle against the Ottomans, as they approached Vlad's capital, they were greeted by 20,000 captured Ottoman soldiers, all impaled in Vlad's now renowned way. The Ottoman leader was so distraught from seeing so many of his fellow men in this state that he turned the rest of his army round there and then, which really shows us just how much fear Vlad's impaling cast over the world. In fact, it is thought that Vlad and his men killed somewhere between 40,000 and 100,000 people during his reigns. However, all things must come to an end, and trying to be the middleman between Hungary and the Ottoman Empire just seemed to be too big of a challenge even for himself. During an Ottoman invasion, Vlad called upon Hungary to back him up. While Hungary's forces did arrive, it was too late, and we aren't sure if they were ever going to help him in this battle anyway. Instead, they took him back to Hungary and locked him up, where he stayed for years. He was eventually freed, however, and once again found his way to becoming voivode of Wallachia. However, in one final battle with the Ottomans, he was finally killed. It was here that his reign of terror finally came to an end and the legends of his life began. And of course, as I mentioned, it was only after his death he became known as Vlad the Impaler. I imagine people were too scared to call him that while he was alive. However, while to many people around the world his legacy is as a cruel, bloodthirsty leader, apparently in many parts of Eastern Europe he is considered a hero. If you happen to be from Romania or other parts of Eastern Europe, I'd really love to know how Vlad Dracula is remembered. And for hundreds of years the name Dracula was left in the history books, only really known by those with an interest in Eastern European history and culture, and someone who wanted to know more about the culture of Eastern Europe was Bram Stoker. According to his son, after Bram's death, inspiration to write the book came to him after a nightmare which was induced due to eating too much crab meat for supper. So yes, we have crab meat to thank for the creation of one of the most famous characters of literature. With the inspiration to write a gothic book about vampires, Stoker began researching them, and specifically Eastern Europe, as that is where the myth of vampires is believed to have originated from. Now, many people think that Stoker was inspired by Vlad III in way more than just by using his name, and it's easy to see why. The Impaler and the Count have many similar traits, and further stories around Dracula written by other authors have linked the Count and the Impaler to being one and the same, with him being Vlad the Impaler before he was turned into a vampire, and some others have parodied this. However, from what we know about Stoker's research into writing his novel, other than the shared name, the similarities between the Impaler and the Count may actually be just a coincidence. When Stoker died in 1912, his wife sold his notes and research on Dracula, and they remained lost all the way up until 1972. They were eventually found in a library in Philadelphia of all places. So that means up until 1972, no one really knew where much of the inspiration for the novel and the character came from, meaning people speculated that Stoker must have been inspired directly by Vlad the Impaler. So when his notes could finally be looked over, it was a huge shock to see that there was no mention of Vlad the Impaler. So how did Bram Stoker discover the name Dracula, and why did he use it? While Vlad the Impaler wasn't mentioned in his notes, he did still do research on his homeland. His notes revealed that Stoker used the book An Account of the Principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia by William Wilkinson to research for his novel. So this explains to us why this part of the world was picked as the setting. Wilkinson's book contains several references to many voivoids named Dracula, and the only note from this book Stoker took on voivoids was that one crossed the Danube to attack the Turkish. Other than that, there's no mention of Vlad specifically or his actions of any kind, so he may have known of him and his love of impaling, but just didn't write about it in his notes. So the name Dracula was present in Wilkinson's book, hence how Stoker discovered the name, but Wilkinson didn't link the name to the Impaler. So why did Stoker use it for his vampire if he didn't know about the awful acts of the actual Dracula, Vlad the Impaler? Well, in Wilkinson's book, while he didn't mention Vlad by name or his actions, he did explain more about the name Dracula in a footnote, and Wilkinson said that Dracula in Wallachian languages means devil, and Stoker took note of this exactly for his research. Wilkinson also wrote that in Wallachia, people who were rather cruel or cunning were given the name Dracula, and it was because of this link to the devil as to why Stoker used the name, not due to the legends and gruesome tales that are linked to the actual owner of the name. Nevertheless, this gives us two famous Draculas, the fictional vampire who drains the blood of his victims and turns them into fellow vampires, and the very real bloodthirsty ruler who would impale people on stakes. I'll let you decide which one is more evil. Now, if you want more about Dracula and vampires to stick your teeth into, then visit Audible, who have very kindly sponsored today's video. Audible is a leading provider of premium digital spoken audio information and entertainment on the internet. Audible content includes an unmatched selection of audiobooks and other audio products. I use Audible so much in my life when I'm doing chores, relaxing, and even when I'm making these videos. I find it hard to find the time to just sit and read without distractions, but thanks to Audible I can listen to all the stories I enjoy while doing other things too. And as an Audible member, every month I can choose one audiobook and 2 exclusive Audible originals. I also have access to member-only sales and get 30% off all regularly priced audiobooks. Audible have a huge selection of audiobooks to choose from, and many that fit the topic of the day. Of course, Bram Stoker's Dracula is available, but why not try out the exclusive Audible edition with an all-star cast including Alan Cummings and Tim Curry. However, if you want something else vampire related, then I would recommend The Radleys by Matt Haig. It's about an ordinary family living in a small British town, who also happen to be vampires. It's a seriously good book, and Matt Haig is one of my favourite authors. Seriously, go check it out. And of course, yes, a certain vampire related saga is available in full on Audible too. Sink your teeth into Audible by visiting audible.com/nameexplain, which will be linked down below, or by texting nameexplain to 500 and starting your free 30-day trial, and choose 1 audiobook and 2 Audible originals for absolutely free. I really hope you all enjoy Audible just as much as I do. Once again, that's audible.com/nameexplain, or text nameexplain to 500. Thank you very much to Audible for sponsoring today's video. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Name Explain depends on small monthly donations from fans like you to help keep the channel running. Just a small amount of $2 a month helps in a huge way, grants you patron exclusive Name Explain extras, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you. Hello all, and thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Stick around and check out another video, and subscribe so that all things Name Explain. You can follow myself on Twitter at NameExplainYT. Follow me there and tweet the name Stu at me so I know you came from this message. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.